Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts. Today I'm going to show you how to make this sparkle quilt. Now the fabric I chose for this quilt is called Always in Season, and it's by Sandy Klopp for American Jane, and it's currently in stores for Riley Blake Designs. Now, as you can see in this quilt, there are two blocks. We have a star block and then this secondary quarter square triangle block. I'm going to show you how to make both of those in this tutorial today. Now, as a reminder, if you are a member of Material Girl Society, you will have access to the PDF printable pattern for this quilt. If you are not a member, please head to my website, materialgirlquilts.com, click on the membership in the top menu bar to learn more. So let's get started. Okay, the first block that we will make for this quilt is the star block. This is actually an Ohio star quilt block, and the first unit we're going to need to make for these are the points for the stars. As you can see, I've already got 3 of them done, so we're going to make one more and I'll show you how we do that. So for each star block, you will need to cut 2 of whatever color, the blue, green, is what I used for my star points. You'll need to cut 2 5.5-inch squares and then cut on both diagonals so that you end up with 8 triangles. And then you will cut 1 5.5-inch yellow square, again cut on both diagonals to end up with 4 yellow triangles, and 1 white 5.5-inch square, and you'll cut the same way to end up with 4 white triangles. So now we need to sew these together. So how we're going to do that is we will take one of the blue and one of the background and place them right sides together, and we will sew a 1/4 inch seam along this edge here. And now we will sew the blue and the yellow triangles together along this edge here, again a 1/4 inch seam. Now, once these are sewn together, I'm going to press them towards the blue fabric. Okay, now that both of these are pressed, we are going to place them right sides together, and since you've pressed to the blue fabric on both of these, your seam will nest. So we'll now sew, again, a 1/4 inch seam along this edge. And there is your finished quarter square triangle. Now, as you can see on these that I've already finished, that last seam I ended up pressing open just to help it lay a little flatter. And once these are all sewn and pressed, you will then trim them to be 4.5 inches square. And just a little tip, when you're trimming these to be square on the quarter square triangles, you will lay up your ruler, and the 45-degree line on your ruler, that center point of your quarter square triangle should be at 2.25 inches is where that point should be when you trim this to be 4.5 inches square. Okay, so I have all of my quarter square triangles pressed and trimmed, and you will select those as well as 4 4.5-inch background squares and 1 4.5-inch center square for your star. I chose reds for all of the centers of my stars on this quilt. So we're going to sew these into rows and then sew the rows together to complete the block. Now that our rows are sewn together, we're going to press towards the solid squares. So for the top and bottom, we will press out towards the background fabric, and for the center, we will press in towards the center square. And since we pressed towards the solid squares, our seams will nest perfectly. Here's our finished block, and I'm going to press these last seams open. And here's how the back of the block will look if you press in the same direction that I did. And here is the front of the block. Now once you're done piecing this block, it will be 12.5 inches square, and you will make a total of 12 blocks for this quilt. Now the second block we need to make is a large quarter square triangle, and I used 2 different low volume prints for that. And again, we're going to piece it exactly how we pieced the quarter square triangles for those units in the star point units in the star block. So we have selected here, we've got 4 of the triangles. What you're going to do for the large quarter square triangle blocks, you're going to cut 13.5 inch squares from each of your 2 fabrics that you've chosen for these blocks, and then you will cut along both diagonals to create 4 triangles per square. Now you will make a total of 6 of the quarter square triangle setting blocks. Now you will also need some of these triangles to piece some of the setting blocks for the edges, where you'll just use 2 triangles. For example, you'll see in the pattern along some of the edges, you'll have them like this, or maybe your triangles will be going the opposite direction depending on the side of the quilt that it's on. So pay close attention to the fabric layout in the pattern. But for these blocks, we will go ahead and assemble 6 of these to create your quarter square triangle setting blocks, just the way we did using these units here in the star blocks. So we will start by sewing along this edge. And then we'll sew along this edge as well. Now you want to select which fabric that you would like to press towards, and you press towards the same fabric on each side so that when you sew them together, your seams will nest. So here they are pressed, and we will sew this last seam. Now here's the large quarter square triangle block all sewn and pressed, and as you can see on the back, I've pressed open on the last seam. Now you will trim this up to be 12.5 inches square. When you're measuring, put the 45-degree line across this seam on your ruler, and this center point will be at 6.25 inches. You will make a total of 6 of these blocks, and you will use the rest of your triangles from these fabrics to create the setting blocks for the outside edges of the quilt. You will then lay out your blocks on point, so that means we are turning our blocks at a 45-degree angle when we set them into the quilt. So you'll lay them out on point as shown in the diagram, including the setting blocks along the edges, and then you will sew those into diagonal rows, and then sew the rows together to complete your quilt top. Now, as you can see, Sparkle finishes as a great throw size quilt and is really pretty quick to put together. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure you click the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss any tutorials going forward. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.